loading into the first map. It's gonna be Eternal Empire, and representing Team Roddy, it is Aqueron.
He faces off against the blue Zerg player in the northeast. He is Elazer. He's got that XCOM tag, but his name still has a go in it. So I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to key in on here. But exciting match, to say the least. I think this map, people kind of talk this one to death a bit, but this is, if you want to play mech, this is a good map for that. Very good defensive setup that you can do. Some abuse you can do to the Zerg if you try to block that third base early on.
Who picked this?
Who picked this?
Yeah,
Cats, I can't read those screens, man. I went to Pennsylvania school, man. I don't know. You tell me who picked the map. Apparently, cost is one up over 10.
The thing is, I wouldn't know who picked it. Normally, I would think maybe the Terran would pick it, but it is not a very aggressive map, and that's where Aqueron thrives. So if we look at the Overlord path from Elazer, his first Overlord went to scout for proxies, right? So that really tells you that he feels like he's the overdog in a sense, that he is the one that's gonna be, that he's gonna be looking for Aqueron to do something tricky.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think especially as the overdog, if we're gonna go with that, the last thing you want is to get caught off guard by some sort of weird cheese, because it is a best of 3, and the thing that offsets that, because best of 3s are very volatile, you know, all you need is one bad game and then you lose a close game and that's it, right? But it's not a GSL group, so Elazer's already in a really good position with the 2-all match score that he has in this group. So an upset wouldn't be like life ending by any means, but you still don't want to lose the series on, just kind of assuming what your opponent is going to do. But we do have that early SCV block in the third, which as we know is quite annoying, because there's not really a great other option for a third base to take early on. And then that Reaper is going to come up and try to make it a little bit more difficult for him to clear that spot out. Now that he has gotten there, he can bring the SCV home too.
Yeah, and this is a pretty standard opening so far. Nothing crazy on the side of Aqueron, but keep your eyes open for something like a 2-base or potentially a 3-base push at least. I think he is one of those. We were talking earlier about Future and the likes. I think he is that type of player still. The European players. Oh, Elazer!
Oh, the queen! The Lings were attacking the queens.
What have I done to you? That's not a good sign. His people are not synced. The Overmind is giving all kinds of weird commands right now.
Yeah, that's awkward. That's awkward. I mean, so Aqueron did pick this map, by the way. We got I was informed by the voice inside my head. And I think if you're a Terran player, you like this map versus Zerg. But Cats, I'm gonna ask you a philosophical question then, because obviously StarCraft 2 has been out for a really long time. We just hit the 10-year anniversary. We had a great big party, great big shebang for it. And your comment about the Overmind, if we were to assume that multiplayer has anything to do now with the effects of the cannon, right, that happened 5 years ago, I mean, there's no Overmind, right?
The effects of,
there's no.
I don't know so much that.
But there is no great overarching thing anymore, though, right? So like all Zerg now is like basically kind of like feral Zerg, right? Like who's actually in charge? Because Kerrigan, yeah. Karen. she turned into Super Karen, right? She's made out of fire or like weird dust or space dust now or something like that. We don't really know what Kerrigan is anymore.
Demanded Amon.
Yeah. So your comment about that, I'm like, maybe that's just some feral Zerg action. Sometimes they just fight amongst themselves now. They're gaining some sense of purpose, and they don't want to be pushed around by a queen anymore. Who knows?
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, the queen would be next in line after the Overmind, right? If they're gonna free themselves from anyone.
Exactly.
So, I mean, these guys are doing what they want indeed in the main of Aqueron. They're actually gonna take out so many SCVs who are ordered to stay put. At the same time, Aqueron is gonna try to push through. Oh man, Hellbats are slow to deal with buildings. These Lings are doing a little bit too much. Aqueron, who is his commander? Who tells you by default on the Terran side, hey, your forces are under attack here?
That's just the robot. That's just the robot that's like, hey, your guys are dying for the most part, right? At the very the Banelings come up. They're going to clear out the Hellbats. So 23 SCVs to 45 drones. No third command center. Cats, it's not looking all that good.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have 38 workers all of a sudden, if you're Aqueron, this is all fine, right? That was a little poke that did more or less what it was supposed to do. It traded well on the other side, but losing 14 SCVs to 4 Zerglings. This is not characteristic for him, I guarantee. Yeah.
Painful to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, leaving your base without a wall versus Zerg is inviting. You know, Zerg are like vampires. You have to open the door for them to come in.
They sure are. And I mean, they've sucked all the fun out of this game, that's for sure, because it's as
yeah, this you know, it's well, I mean, if we were to try to visualize or conceptualize Aqueron's position, he's like they went to the beach and he's like, oh hey guys, it'd be really funny if you buried me up to my head and took a picture, and then they just left him there, you know. He's just like, oh, he's like, this is gonna be hard to climb out of.
Yeah, pretty much. But you gotta stick in it, I suppose. So he's gonna try to do something with half the supply. It's probably not gonna pan out too well, but yeah, we're here. We're now.
Well, he's just gotta play mega greedy, right? Like, what else can he do? Just try to play greedy and hope that Elazer gives him time to build something that he can actually work with. Because, I mean, mutas are coming out. That's not gonna make it easier because he still needs to invest in infrastructure, right? He's only finishing, I think, the 2nd and 3rd barracks now. So if he wants to get to 5 racks, while building missile turrets and getting upgrades and everything, that's going to be really hard. He doesn't have anything to actually deal with the mutas. He wants to go bio, but without the setup, he lacks what he actually needs to do what he wants to do here.
Yeah, I mean, any tech choice, I think, on the side of Elazer would be a brilliant maneuver at this point. And Elazer is the type of player, by the way, that I think would be thrown off by things like that, like that Hellbat attack if they do a little bit of damage. He is a very, very straightforward player. The problem is he's so very good at it. It's so very difficult to get one past him, right? One that he doesn't see coming, that's not accounted for in his system. And yeah, Aqueron will realize that he does not indeed have the ways to deal with the first wave of attack from Elazer, and that will be that. A disappointing game 1 for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, but you really need to make sure that you put a cork in it when you're going for those move outs early on against Zerg, because when you have that few units and you have that little production, you know, even 2 Hellions just finishing right there isn't going to save the day. The Zerglings can get the surround on him. He's trying to micro on the other side of the map with that push, right? Because he's trying not to get baited. And unfortunately, he just wasn't able to hold on against that counterattack, because I don't think that push is a bad thing to do. You force a lot of larvae to be put towards the lings. The Hellbats have a lot of micro potential. But when you have to look back and try to save yourself while you're trying to attack, that's where we see lots of Terran players fall apart. You can't let those units inside your main base mineral line too.
Did you say the Hellbats have a lot of micro potential?
No. I was saying he doesn't have as much micro potential on the other side of the map with the medevac, right? Yeah. He was doing some pickup and drop micro with them to get over the wall. But it's harder to do that when you're trying to micro your units at home as well.
Yeah, absolutely. At the same time, I think if you just attack move the SCVs, at least you don't lose 14 of them. Maybe you lose, 3.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. You'll no argument from me on that, Cap. That could have been handled a lot better.
Maybe he didn't get the message from the adjutant. Is that her name or his name? I'm not sure what.
Well, I mean, maybe it's possible. I mean, there are other announcers too, right? I guess you could try to like role play and be like, well, Swan's my commander, right? When he tells me that my guys are under attack, or. Well,
I have Alarak, or I have White right now, but I had Alarak before, and he was pretty good about everything except nukes. Like I got nuked so many times he's just nonchalant about it. He's like, nuclear launch, by the way. And it's like,
this is why I deliberately made most of the voice lines in my pack start with onomatopoeia, so that you can kind of tie cues to what sound you hear at first, and then yeah, that's why I say hope you like nukes. I say it very loud.
Love it.
We're loaded into game number 2 in the bottom right, trailing 0-1. We have the red Terran player. He is Aqueron.
And if that was his map choice, I have to imagine Elazer from AGO chose this map here, which is surprising.
I feel I feel like some of the Muta builds are kind of hard to deal with on this map when they come from that bottom side. Like, it's just, there's a decent amount of space you have to cover, and there's not really a good way to try to chuck a Reaper, I think, into the main either. Like, if you're like, oh, I'm going to throw it away, like, Reapers just don't, there's really only one way that they can go. So I know that the gold base is really, really good for Terran on this map. I think there was, I don't know if we saw it in like GSL or something. I watched like a match like very recently where it was like just dunkaroos on somebody with that and mass bio push. But there are some things that smart Zergs can do on this map that maybe, I don't know, maybe Elazer's going to do something interesting. He's got a 1-0 lead. He has a cool, fun build for this map. I'd love to see it.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, though, with your first assessment. I think that this map is great for two-base Muta, and two-base Muta is a go-to build for Zergs, one that Elazer is very comfortable with, one that he uses often. And I think taking that and the fact that he chose this map into account, if I were Aqueron, and if I had done, you know, your line of thinking, what's the best possible blind hard counter to two-base Muta that you can think of? Is there one?
I don't, man, I'll tell you what, I have tried. I struggle versus that build really, really badly on EU ladder. Zergs are very good with that. I think a lot of Terrans try to throw like Hellions in, but with the one real entrance, it's very hard if the Zerg puts anything up front to wall and they have their queens there. Battle cruiser rushes, weirdly enough, get overwhelmed sometimes by these builds too. Like I've seen so many Zergs just kind of like shut it down. But I don't know. I think the thing I like the most is when Terrans just play really greedy and just try to invest really heavily into the eco so that by the time the Mutas are coming out, they can afford the defenses and then just try to get that big bio push that can overwhelm them before they can afford a lot of Banelings. I don't know. But if you do that and the Zerg is smart and they get enough Mutas early enough, then obviously a missile turret or two isn't going to help and you're still going to be stuck inside your base. So there's a lot of very careful maneuvering I think both players need to do for either side of it to be successful. Because if he just goes Mutas and just flies across the map and Aqueron's like, oh yeah, I went for a 2-1-1 or something weird that we don't see often, like some Korean Terrans are doing that, right? And then transitioning into mech once
really?
Marines.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's some players that have been doing that. I've been hearing some talks about that because I've personally been curious. I'm like, well, what are people doing? What is really good against this now that it's becoming a staple of the meta again? And people are just saying, you know, if the Zerg's greedy enough, you throw Hellions at him, right? All he's doing is cranking out drones right now. He has link speed on the way, but he doesn't, you know, he's only got 4 Zerglings. So it's not like there's no opportunity to punish the Zerg on this. He can delay the third. He can try to do that too. That's really important. But I don't
for all
think
the reasons you've mentioned, I feel like this is so good for Muta because the natural is so relatively easy to defend as well, right? You put up a spine or something, all of a sudden, anything that goes through that has to go up a high ground into a choke. So yeah, I think this is pretty much the perfect map for it. I instinctively always thought of 2-1-1 as the hard counter to two-base Muta. I mean, you never saw two-base Muta when 2-1-1 was dominant, right? Ever. It was just terrible.
No. Well, two-base Muta has been out of the meta. Honestly, like Mutas have been out of the meta for TVZ forever. I don't know if it was like the first Zerg player that was like, wait a second, I can overwhelm an early BC with Mutas if I do it right. And that's when I think it started to really come back because like the meta shifted into this, everybody just started all-inning, right? Mass Ling, Ravager all-ins because that was the best way to kill BC rushers because Battlecruiser Rush kind of countered most openings that Zerg could do. So then when they came up with counter builds and then Terrans started going Banshees so they wouldn't die to Roaches, and all of a sudden Zergs are like, wait, yeah, Mutas are actually really good against these builds, so why not?
Yeah. So furthermore on this two-base Muta build from Zerg, it is exactly what you were pointing out to. The Zerg wants to develop a two-base economy very fast on the back of making very few units. This is why this map is so strong. But on other maps, there's usually opportunities to punish with like, say, 6 or 8 Helium pokes because the Zerg won't have that many Zerglings. Or the Hellbat push that we've been seeing that we saw Aqueron actually attempt at, possibly thinking that it could be two-base Muta on that particular map as well. So there are definitely things that I think you can do. I would still like to see some more blind hard counters like what I think maybe 2-1-1 could be. But I generally agree with you. If you just sit back and you can obviously defend perfect, which is, you know, a tall ask out of anyone, I think you're usually ahead in like upgrades and so on as the Terran player. So if you can just establish like 3 base and just chill until you have a lot, I like that too.
Yeah. Well, from the Terran perspective, the Zerg's goal seems to be, right, the mutas kind of pin you in your base. They make it very hard for you to punish that. They're, you're usually trying to drone behind, get a lot of banelings, and then by the time that you actually are ready to move out, there's 40 banelings with the creep at the middle of the map, and then your bio, well, it's very hard to move out because if you take a dive, you lose a bad fight. And on your medevac side of the mutas, because they'll come back and be a part of it. So you have to be extremely cautious with the way that you try to handle these types of situations. And I like that he didn't yeet the BC in because the mutas would have already been out with some Queen and Spore support.
Yeah, so Aqueron anticipating those mutas, and it's almost like you were foreshadowing for this, right? Like, because you can overwhelm that BC, but Aqueron will have the chance to actually kill a bunch of muta potentially if they engage it, and then TP out, maybe 1 or 2 actually. This is a lot of muta, but this is pretty good maneuvers. It will keep the muta further pinned back. Goes after the queens a little bit weirdly. Queens are
beautiful
much less.
I mean, that battlecruiser gets away, Cats, but what did he kill? Just a queen? To repair a BC from 1 health, which it basically was at, to full health costs 25% of it, right? So that's 100. That's roughly 100 minerals and roughly 75 Vespene gas is the cost of fixing the battlecruiser now. So he only killed 150 minerals, and he has enough queens that it's not going to affect. It shouldn't affect his larva production or his creep spread. So I think that was actually really well handled. Like, the one battlecruiser on its own is not really going to be great at chasing the mutas either, especially since he didn't invest into Yamato. So the mutas can continue to do their thing, and he's going to go straight for that combat shield tech lab. That's massive pickoff here for Elazer.
I mean, one thing that I did like is that it bought a lot of time. But hey, if you know where the mutas are, why is your entire army over somewhere else, right? The mutas are behind your army, and you have no turrets in your main. That's got to be something that he needs to account for. There's a lot of things that Aqueron is doing that I love. Oh no, not again.
Yeah, well, this is just, I mean, he's got the creep vision. He sees that the army is trying to push. He throws the counter attack. He still has those mutas. The 1 BC will never be enough to just deal with all of it. And I don't even know if he just killed it. Where did the BC even go? It's teleporting back over there again. But he's just gotten so much damage done. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Look at what is waiting in Elazer's natural. Baneling speed is ready. He's just building a crap ton of banelings. Like, you're going to try to step on creep. I'm going to slam you with so many banelings. You're not going to be able to survive. And the mutas are going to continue to be forcing him to waste money on things like turrets, or he's just going to keep losing stuff.
19 SCVs, the combat shields as well. It looks like maybe Aqueron was thinking about a combat shield's timing, and it's been delayed endlessly. I really like that he was taking the gold, but it was not well defended. There's not groups of units waiting for this muta. There's not enough turret coverage. There are little things that are missing here. I'm particularly a big fan of mines, for example. It's so much harder to fly mutas around with mines or a single Thor.
There's no overseer with this, right? So
no.
That's a good point. That's a really good point, Cats. Actually, I think a few mines spread out could help a lot. And that brings us to the other. That brings us to the other part of the problem, though, right? He's lost so many workers. He's starting to float a little bit of gas because he wants to build Marines. So getting out tanks and medevacs with this is going to become increasingly difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm personally not a huge fan of tanks. I know a lot of Terrans still prefer it against Mutiling Bane, but I find mines are a little bit better, a little bit more well-rounded against the composition because it pumps up so much, and it can shoot up.
I hard agree there. I love Widow mines versus these types of styles for exactly the reason that you mentioned, and also just every time these mutas come in with no overseer too, it's so greedy because Elazer's just like, yeah, I know you're not building mines, so I'm not going to build an overseer. And the possibility, the potential to at least catch a few of those mutas and stop the snowball is huge. But instead, he's just going to lose everything. The mutas come over, 1 turret down, 2nd turret down. Ling's trying to poke the natural. He's never going to get across the map. He's never going to do it. This one battlecruiser is going to get kind of poked away at by these 2 queens. He could bring the mutas back. It doesn't really matter at this point, I don't feel. Elazer's been able to do everything he's wanted to do this game with no issue at all. Just perfect play for the most part. Like, he executed the strategy exactly the way that he needed to.
Yeah, without much to say on the side of Aqueron. I mean, again, those turrets, the lack of Thor or mines or something waiting, or at least enough Marines left behind to deal with those muta would have been great. He was ahead in upgrades by a landslide. Elazer has just equalized upgrades now. So there was definitely a solid shot for Aqueron, but unfortunately,